Hi everyone, today's message comes from Matthew 9, verses 36 to chapter 10, verse 4. We're not going to read the whole thing, just a section of it, a rather famous section, and talking about Jesus, it says the following. It says, "When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." Here Jesus says that the world is ready to hear the gospel, that the world is ready to receive him, but all that needs to happen is people need to go out and reap that harvest, to share the gospel. So what is Jesus asking us to do here? Well, firstly, he is asking us to pray. But why pray? It seems like an odd first step. Well, firstly, when we pray and God answers that prayer by stirring up people's hearts for a particular group, God places in those people a gifting, a passion, an endurance to be able to go and reach that group. This is far more than just a recruitment or a training or forcing someone to do it. But when God places in their hearts a desire to go and share the gospel, it is far more effective, and ultimately God is the one doing the work through them. But secondly, when we pray, there's a stirring that happens in our own hearts. When we have a prayer for a certain group of people, God places a compassion in our hearts for that group of people. When we pray that God would reach an urgent need, there is a desire in our hearts to be a part of reaching that urgent need. When we pray that God would stir up laborers for the harvest, there's suddenly desire in our hearts that we would become part of the laborers that are going in to reap the harvest. But the call here is more than just prayer. We are to also share the gospel, to become part of the laborers. Let me illustrate that with a story by a story with Martin Luther, the great reformer, and one of his friends. Martin Luther, they would go out and share the gospel, be on the front line of the battle of the Reformation, but his friend would stay in his monastery and pray and contend for Martin Luther as he did so. One night, this friend has a dream that he sees a world that is ready to be harvested, this massive wheat field, and out there was one laborer hacking away, trying to harvest it all in. And he had this overwhelming sense of sadness as he saw this laborer trying to do all the work by himself, this impossible task. And at that moment, he sees the face of the laborer, and it was Martin Luther. He wakes up and he says these words, "I need to leave my prayer and I need to go and do work." Don't hear me wrong, we are called to pray, but we are called to do more than that by Christ. We are called to go and be laborers. And we see this in the text. He goes immediately afterwards and he sends out the disciples. "I have given you authority to go out, to go and do this work." And I might hear you on the other side of the screen going, "But Joe, I'm not a disciple. I'm not nearly as special as they were." But what I love about this text is that Matthew goes and he lists the 12. He first lists Peter, who was the outspoken, bold one, but also was very unstable. He would one moment walk on water and on the next he would be sinking in it. He was also a guy that would preach to thousands of people and thousands would be saved. At the same time, he was also one who denied the gospel in fear of just a select few, as we see in Galatians 2. We had James and John, who were upper class and sophisticated, who demanded to be the main leaders in Jesus' kingdom, but at the same time, they were known as sons of thunder because of their bad temper, and they got so angry. We had Andrew, who was outshined by his more talented and gifted brother, Peter. We had Thomas, who was known for his pessimism. We had Nathaniel Bartholomew, who was known for his sincerity. We had Philip and James of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, who were hardly ever mentioned in the Gospels, who were always in the background. We had Judas, who would ultimately go and betray Jesus. We also see that there is Simon, the zealot, who was a terrorist or a rebel against the institution of Rome. He hated them and violently acted against them. But then on the other hand, you had Matthew, who was a traitor of Israel as he worked for Rome in order to make money. What we see in this text is we see a variety of different people who had all their flaws and were extraordinary. And God still used them greatly. And so what we see here is, though you might feel ordinary and able to go out and share the gospel, that Christ will still be able to use you. If you rely on him and depend on him and trust in him, he will use you to reach the harvest. So what are we meant to do today? Let us pray for more laborers, and let us be bold and go and share the gospel. Cheers, everyone. Have a great day.